I thought I was paranoid, until I found a tiny black lens peeking out from my birdhouse. Then another one, hidden in my backyard floodlight. Turns out, my HOA neighbor had turned my entire yard into his own personal reality show, and people were paying to watch. But what he didn't know was that I have my own camera, and when I found out what he was really doing with the footage, let's just say, I gave him a front row seat to his own destruction. It started with something small. A weird feeling. You know the kind. You're out in your yard, watering the plants or picking up after your dog, and suddenly your skin prickles, like someone's watching. But when you look around, no one's there. Just silence, like the air itself is holding its breath. At first, I laugh it off. I mean, come on, who would be watching me? I live in a quiet neighborhood. The kind where people wave as they mow their lawns and borrow cups of sugar like it's still the 1950s. My backyard is my happy place. I've got string lights over the patio, a couple of lounge chairs, and a little herb garden I'm way too proud of. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. But then, things started to get weird. I'd order something online, get the delivery notification, and the package wouldn't be there. Just gone. I thought, maybe porch pirates were getting bolder, but I have a camera at my front door. Nothing ever showed up, not even the delivery. But the app said delivered. More than once. Then one night, I was out back with my dog, Duke, a big golden retriever with more bark than bite, and the patio lights flickered. Just for a second. I figured it was a wiring issue, or maybe I tripped a breaker. But it happened again the next night. And again, always around the same time, just after sunset. The weird part? My porch lights are solar. They don't flicker. Still, I didn't connect the dots. I was busy with work, tired, telling myself it was all in my head. Probably stress, maybe burnout. But deep down, something wasn't right. And then there's Marjorie Keller. If Stepford Wives had a drill sergeant, it'd be her. She's the president of our HOA, and she acts like she's the mayor, sheriff, and moral compass of the entire zip code. Every time I see her, she's got her blonde bob hair sprayed into place, wearing pastel cardigans like it's a uniform, and that damn clipboard glued to her arm like it's part of her skeleton. Her smile is always too wide, too perfect. She waves like she likes you, but her eyes are already judging your mailbox paint or the way your grass grows half an inch too tall. When I first moved in, she brought over cookies and a printed copy of the HOA guidelines. Told me, "Welcome to the neighborhood. We take pride in order and consistency here." I remember thinking, she definitely alphabetized her spice rack by color. The first time I got notice from her, it was for a non-conforming patio umbrella. The second was for leaving my trash bins visible from the street for 15 minutes. I started getting notes tucked under my doormat, written in that fake nice tone. Just a gentle reminder or a friendly suggestion, always signed. Warmly, Marjorie Keller, HOA President. I swear, every time I saw that signature, I wanted to feed it to the paper shredder. Then the odd stuff got worse. Duke, who's usually a chill, happy dog, started barking at nothing. He'd growl at the corner of the yard by the fence. Tail stiff, ears back, body frozen, like he saw something I couldn't. One night, he even refused to go outside. Just stood in the doorway, growling low and deep. That dog has never refused the backyard, not even the pouring rain. And I started seeing movement, flickers, like a shadow darting between the hedges. I turned to look and see nothing. But it happened again, and again. Same place, same feeling. I told myself it was the wind, a stray cat, my imagination. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something, or someone was watching me, and they were getting bolder. It was a Saturday morning when I found it. The kind of day that starts off normal enough. Sun shining, birds chirping, coffee in one hand, dog leash in the other. I was walking around the yard with Duke, just doing a casual check on the garden, when something caught my eye. It was a glint, quick, like a reflection. I bent down near the old birdhouse I'd mounted on the fence a couple years ago. That's when I saw it, tucked right under the roof, barely visible unless you were standing exactly where I was a tiny black lens, round, glassy, not even the size of a dime. I froze. For a second, I just stared at it, wondering if I'd lost my mind. It wasn't part of the birdhouse. I'd built it myself. I knew every nail, every screw, every splintered edge. And this wasn't mine. I reached up slowly, heart thudding, and tapped it with my fingertip. Plastic, cold, wired, a camera. At first, I laughed, or tried to. Maybe it was someone's weird idea of a prank. Maybe a neighbor kid messing around. I looked around at the yards nearby, trying to figure out which direction the lens was pointed. It wasn't facing the street. It was facing my house. I yanked it out, my hands shaking a little, and walked straight to the patio. I laid it on the table and just stared at it. A small blinking red light was hidden underneath the casing. It was still on. I must have sat there for 15 minutes, just staring at it, trying to make it make sense. I even convinced myself maybe it was part of a drone or a game, something harmless. But that illusion shattered the moment I checked the solar light on the edge of my patio. I don't know why I looked at it next. Maybe some part of me already knew. The casing popped off easier than it should have. Inside, nestled in the base, was another lens, slightly different model, wired into the panel. Carefully hidden, expertly even, it was watching too. I didn't even react at first. Just stood there, holding the light casing in one hand and the second camera in the other, like I'd uncovered a bomb and didn't know which wire to cut. My mouth went dry. My stomach felt like it flipped upside down. Who the hell was recording my yard? And why? I sat on the patio with both cameras in front of me and called my buddy Kevin. He's kind of my go-to for anything tech-related. I told him what I found, tried to keep my voice calm. He laughed at first, said maybe a neighbor had them as part of a new security system, and they accidentally pointed them my way. Yeah, sure. Accidentally hid 2 different spy cameras inside my yard decorations. He offered to swing by the next day to check them out, but in that moment, I felt completely alone. I looked out across the yard, and suddenly everything fell off. The wind in the trees, the chirping, the silence. Like I was standing on a stage I didn't know I was on. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room, lights off, curtains half drawn, eyes fixed on the backyard. My phone buzzed a few times. Text from Kevin, another from my sister. But I didn't look. I was too focused, too wired. Around 2 a.m., I saw it. A red blink. Quick. Then gone. I blinked. It came again. This time, 2 of them. One near the fence line. One closer to the tree at the back corner of the yard. I felt frozen. Like my body didn't want to move. Like part of me still wanted to pretend it was fireflies, or a trick of the light, or anything other than what I knew deep down. Someone had been watching me. For how long? I didn't know. But now I was watching back. The next morning, I didn't waste time. I brought the cameras inside, grabbed a set of gloves, and sat down at the kitchen table like I was defusing a bomb. My coffee sat untouched as I popped open the casing on the second camera, the one I'd found inside the solar light. Tucked inside was a tiny SD card, barely bigger than my thumbnail. My hands were shaking as I slid it into an old card reader I dug out of a drawer. The drive popped open on my laptop, and that's when everything started to feel real. Dozens of folders, all labeled by date. I clicked the first one. There I was, clear as day, standing in my backyard, grilling burgers, talking to my daughter as she splashed in the kiddie pool. The timestamp showed it was from 3 weeks ago. The footage was crisp, high resolution with audio. I could hear every word, every laugh, even my daughter's off-key singing as she danced barefoot in the grass. My stomach dropped. I opened another file. It was me and my sister talking late one night, just 2 of us on the patio with glasses of wine, venting about work and life. I didn't even remember we'd had that conversation until I saw it play out like a scene from a movie. Another file, me stretching in the morning after a run, wiping sweat off my forehead, lifting my shirt to cool down. The angle was low, deliberate. It made me feel watched in a way I hadn't ever felt before. Violated. Whoever was filming me hadn't just been doing it for fun. They were collecting moments. Private ones. I clicked on a folder labeled live__logs. Inside were streaming timestamps and a list of usernames, IP addresses. My head was spinning. Whoever set this up wasn't just storing the footage. They were broadcasting it. I started checking file paths, metadata, anything I could find. One of the text files had a reference link, buried in a comment line. I copied it and pasted it into a private browser. It took a second to load, and then it appeared. A dark site, black background, neon green text. Backyard secrets, unfiltered, unseen, unknowing. My breath caught in my throat. A live camera preview window showed a familiar scene, my backyard, right now, in real time, my own house, displayed like I was some exhibit in a zoo. There were tabs at the top, daytime relaxation, night feed, the patio files. And then I saw it, my name, first and last, listed under the feed, tagged, subscriber favorite. It read underneath. I don't know how long I sat there. My hands were numb. I felt sick, like I needed to scrub my skin raw just to feel clean again. My throat tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't even move. Someone had taken my life, my home, and turned it into entertainment. There were comments, disgusting ones, people talking about me, rating me, guessing about my relationships, complimenting my daughter's cute laugh. I wanted to punch a hole through the screen. I wanted to scream. Instead, I scrolled. One of the thumbnails caught my eye. It was blurry, shot at an angle from a distance, but unmistakable. A woman, mid-50s, blonde bob, pale pink cardigan, clipboard tucked under her arm, frozen in the frame, leaning over my fence, her hand reaching up, adjusting something. It was Marjorie Keller. And just like that, everything snapped into place. The phony charm, the fake smiles, the HOA notices designed to draw me outside at specific times, her walks at odd hours, the way she always seemed to know when I was home. When I wasn't, she wasn't just watching me. She had orchestrated this. And she wasn't some nosy neighbor with control issues. She was a predator in pearls. And she had no idea what I was about to do next. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those comments, those files, my life, sold, streamed, picked apart by strangers. And Marjorie, standing by my fence, calm as ever, tweaking a camera like it was just another box to check off her clipboard. I felt a rage I'd never known before, the kind that starts in your chest and slowly poisons your veins. But fear, that was there too, because this wasn't just someone being creepy. This was calculated, organized, and if she could do it to me, she could do it to anyone. I wanted to go public right away, march to the police with the SD card, the website, the footage. But my gut stopped me. What if she claimed it was fake? What if she'd already wiped her prints, destroyed the rest of the cameras, shut down the site? I'd seen people like her work the system before, polished, composed, all smiles in public, while their hands did the dirty work in the dark. I needed more than just a couple of camera feeds. I needed irrefutable proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I started watching her. At first it felt wrong, creepy even, but then I reminded myself, she had been watching me for weeks, probably months. This wasn't revenge. It was survival. Marjorie had a schedule. I don't know why that surprised me. She seemed like the type who organized her bathroom towels by height. She walked every evening around 7:15, just as the sun started to dip. Always the same path. Past the mailboxes, up to North Street, loop around a cul-de-sac, back toward her home. Clipboard in hand, like always. Sometimes she paused near people's yards, scribbled something down. And it wasn't just me. She was targeting others too. I remember a conversation we had a couple weeks back. I'd mentioned the flickering lights in my yard, half laughing, saying I might need to call an electrician. She smiled sweetly and said, "Don't be silly, probably just a squirrel chewing through wires. You know how nature can be unpredictable." At the time, I nodded, thinking she was just brushing me off. But now, it was gaslighting. She knew what was causing it. Hell, she probably timed it. Every little interaction started playing in my head like puzzle pieces I'd ignored. Then came the shed. It sat behind her house, painted the same pale blue as the rest of her home, tucked away beneath a flowering dogwood tree. I'd always thought it was a gardening shed, maybe where she kept her tools, or whatever weird equipment HOA presidents use to measure lawn height. But one evening, just after she finished her walk and went inside, I noticed something strange. She didn't lock it. I waited. 10 minutes. 20. Then I moved, heart pounding. I crept across the yard next door, hopped the low fence, and slipped behind the shed. I hesitated, one hand on the latch, trying to convince myself I wasn't crazy, but the door creaked open easily. What I saw inside almost made me fall backwards. There were monitors, at least 4 of them, mounted above a desk cluttered with hard drives, tangled cords, and neatly labeled folders. Each monitor played different live feeds, angles of yards, front doors, back patios. Mine was one of them. Center screen. Next to the screens were shelves stacked with USB drives and SD cards, each labeled by address. Not names, just numbers. One for every house in the neighborhood. It looked like, and there, beside the tech, were stacks of paper printouts. HOA violations. Dates. Times. Photos. She had a whole wall pinned up like she was running a surveillance operation, not a neighborhood association. I didn't have much time. My fingers trembled as I plugged in a flash drive I'd brought, copying over everything I could. Screenshots, data logs, folders. I couldn't take anything, not without tipping her off, but I could leave with digital proof. I made sure not to move anything else. Not a cable, not a folder. When the copy finished, I slipped the drive into my pocket, took one last glance at the monitors, one which showed Duke pacing the backyard, and closed the shed door behind me. I didn't breathe again until I was back in my own house. That night, I sat in the dark with the footage playing on loop. It felt surreal. I'd been hunted like some kind of neighborhood experiment, and I hadn't even seen it coming. But something had shifted now. Something big. She wasn't the only one watching anymore. Now I was watching her. I should have known she wouldn't go down quietly. After I copied the files from her shed, things got worse. Fast. It was like Marjorie knew someone was closing in, and she was lashing out to keep control. Within a week, I got 3 separate violation letters from the HOA, each more ridiculous than the last. The first one claimed my hedges were too unstructured, not overgrown, not blocking a sidewalk, just unstructured, whatever that meant. The second one accused me of placing unauthorized fixtures on community-facing property. Translation? The new patio chairs I ordered from Amazon were apparently a crime against the neighborhood aesthetic. The third one? Late trash bin pickup. She said I left them out 27 minutes past the designated retrieval window. 27. She included a time-stamped photo as evidence. I don't even know how she got it, unless someone had been watching me. Oh, wait. They had. Then she showed up at my door. I opened it to find Marjorie standing there, clipboard in hand, wearing a pastel blouse like she was hosting a bake sale. But her eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were full of venom. Flanking her were 2 board members, both of them staring like I was some kind of criminal. "Good afternoon," she said, smiling tight. "We're here to address some concerns about your conduct." I stared at her. Conduct. "There have been reports," she said smoothly, "that you become aggressive, hostile. Some neighbors have felt unsafe. We're required to take these things seriously." I wanted to laugh, but my jaw was locked too tight. So now I'm being investigated for what, exactly? Having patio furniture you don't like. She didn't flinch, just glanced at her clipboard. "You're in clear violation of several HOA bylaws, and if this behavior continues, we may be forced to pursue legal action. You'll receive an official notice by mail." And she turned and walked away like she hadn't just dropped a grenade on my front step. Sure enough, the next day I got the letter. It was cold, sterile, threatening. They were demanding compliance with community standards, or they begin proceedings against me, whatever that meant. Probably fines, maybe more. I felt like I was being boxed in from every side. The walls were closing in, and Marjorie was holding the blueprint. But the real hit came later that night. I hadn't checked the dark web feed in days. I couldn't bring myself to look, but something told me to go back. Maybe I just needed to know if it was still active. Maybe I was hoping it wasn't. I shouldn't have looked. There, in a newly uploaded folder, was a clip titled, Slumber Party, Sweet Moments from a Harrison Backyard. I clicked it. My daughter, her friends, giggling, dancing with flashlights, making Eskimo rays. Just kids being kids, completely unaware they were being recorded, sold, watched. There were comments, horrible ones, adults, strangers, saying things I can't even repeat, rating the video, asking for more. That's when something inside me snapped. I stood up, shoved the laptop across the table, and felt the rage rise so fast it made my vision blur. This wasn't just an invasion of privacy anymore. This was my family. My daughter. Marjorie had crossed a line she couldn't come back from. No more collecting evidence. No more hoping it would fix itself. She wanted a war? Fine. I'd give her one. If Marjorie wanted entertainment, I was going to give her a front row seat to a show she'd never forget. I started small. One afternoon, I went out back and dug a hole right in the middle of the yard. Not too deep, just enough to make it look suspicious. I pulled a dusty old box in the garage, wrapped it in plastic, and shoved it in like I was hiding something I didn't want found. Then I made sure to look over my shoulder a lot. Real paranoid, real twitchy. The next day, I dragged an old chest from the attic and set it on the patio, covered it with a tarp. Then I spent a good 15 minutes whispering into my phone with my back to the house, throwing in lines like, "It's scheduled for Wednesday, and just make sure the money clears." I even scribbled fake numbers and maps on a clipboard of my own and waved it around while pacing. By day 3, I saw movement. The cameras were blinking. She was watching. But while I played my part on stage, I was also working behind the scenes. I still had those files I'd pulled from her shed, raw footage of other people's homes. Most of it was harmless stuff, but there were a few clips of Marjorie's own backyard. One in particular showed her pacing with a glass of wine, muttering to someone on speakerphone. The captions in the feed automatically generated. Picked up phrases like, "Uploads glitching and those subscriptions dropped last night." I uploaded the clip to the same dark forum she'd used for mine, labeled it, HOA Queen's Backyard, Caught in the Act. It exploded. Subscribers recognized her immediately. Some of them were furious, felt duped. Others were just excited by the new content. I saw a post like, "Wait, that's the lady who runs this? And she's a puppet master?" In less than 24 hours, her comment section turned into a frenzy. And then came the final move. I hijacked her signal. I had mapped out her shed system from when I was inside, traced how the cameras were routed to her home Wi-Fi. With a bit of help from an old co-worker who owed me a favor, I rerouted one of her outdoor cams, the one aimed at her own patio, and pushed it to a private live stream. No password, no filter, just Marjorie in her backyard, sipping wine, pacing in her slippers, and making hushed calls to someone she called Leo. She kept saying, "We need to shut it down," and "It's not safe anymore." She had no clue her panic was being broadcast live. That night, I stayed up and compiled everything. Every violation letter, every recorded clip, screenshots of the dark web forum, footage of her shed, a list of subscriber logs with timestamps, usernames, and locations. I even wrote a letter detailing everything, how it started, how far it went, how deep her obsession with power and control really ran. Then I made 3 separate emails. One went to a local news outlet with the subject line, HOA President Caught Running Hidden Camera Network. The second went to every member of the HOA board, marked urgent. And the third, straight to the police. I didn't sign any of them. No need. The evidence spoke for itself. The show was over. But the fallout? That was just beginning. It didn't even take a full day. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Phones were ringing nonstop. Social media lit up with words like scandal, privacy, lawsuit. A reporter from Channel 7 was parked outside Marjorie's house before lunch, microphone in hand, trying to look casual while a cameraman zoomed in on the front door. The HOA board scrambled to save face. They called an emergency meeting that afternoon, but most of them didn't even show. The ones who did, they looked like they'd seen ghosts. And Marjorie? She showed up late, sunglasses on indoors, acting like none of it was real. I have no idea what this is, she said, smiling too wide. These accusations are completely fabricated. There's no proof. Then the footage hit the news. Full clips, her in the shed. The monitors, her voice saying, the subscriptions dropped. A snapshot of my backyard with a visible date and time. They played it all, and the internet devoured it. Within an hour, Marjorie was trending, but not in a good way. I watched from my living room as 2 police cruisers pulled up to her house. They didn't knock. They went straight in. One came out with hard drives stacked in his arms. Another followed with a box of documents. And then Marjorie herself handcuffed, screaming at the cameras to stop filming. They didn't. She was charged with multiple counts: privacy invasion, illegal surveillance, wiretapping, and distribution of unauthorized recordings. The charges stuck. Turns out, her little operation had been going on longer than I even realized. Subscribers dropped off instantly. The website hosting her streams went dark. And her pristine image, the one she'd spent years building, shattered. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. The cherry on top came 2 weeks later. Her husband left, moved out, filed for divorce, and full control of their assets. The HOA disbanded within the month. Turns out, nobody wanted to be associated with the peeping president. And me? I got a letter from an attorney offering a settlement. Substantial. Enough to cover therapy, legal fees, and maybe even a new patio set, the kind that wasn't considered a violation. But the best moment came at the hearing. Marjorie stood across the courtroom, still trying to keep her chin high. Her cardigan was wrinkled this time. Her hands shook when she spoke. She looked at me with fire in her eyes and said, "You have no idea what you've done." I didn't flinch. I leaned in just enough for her to hear. "I gave you a taste of your own channel." Her face fell. I walked out before the judge finished speaking. Now my yard's quiet again. Duke's back to sunbathing without barking at shadows. My daughter's planning another sleepover, and I told her she could, because this time, the only cameras out there are mine, and I'm the only one with the passwords.